Well, hello. I got distracted by the chat here and how to warm up all of our Rams by seeing all of your names flowing into the chat here. It's so great to see or know you're out there. I think somebody asked me this afternoon, a friend, and said, "Is this going to be one of those things where you can see us, or we can see you, but you can't see us?" And I said, "Unfortunately, that's the way it's going to be, because I wish we could just gather you all up and be together." So much RAM love and community coming in. So today I'm really excited to host with Joyce McConnell, our 15th president of CSU, our Tell Me More series that is focusing on philanthropy. My name is Kim Tobin and I serve as Vice President of University Advancement, and I have some great panelists with us this evening to share their perspective on philanthropy, as well as get some insights into the university. So before we start, just keep the names flowing in the chat. Great to see so many of you. We also have a graphic artist, narrator, Ellen O'Neill, who's also one of our alums. She's going to be taking notes. So that's a new and different thing to do that virtually. So welcome to Ellen, and thank you. Noted by Ellen is her company, and she's a CSU grad. So excited to have her here. All of you are members of one of our donor societies, so we're just missing being with all of you and hosting events on campus. So it's great to have you here tonight. So with that, I am going to introduce our panelists first, just because they're on the screen. And so the first person I'm going to introduce, many of you know Joe Blake. He is our Chancellor Emeritus of the CSU system, and he oversaw CSU, Fort Collins, Global, and Pueblo. And that role, he is no stranger in the Denver community, working in so many different aspects in the Denver community. He's involved in numerous philanthropic organizations and has received many awards for that service. So he's a proud Colorado native and an adopted Ram with a lot of zeal for CSU. So Joe, thanks for being here. Dr. Liz Koneski is a 2009 grad of CSU, and she has a rock star job. She is the head of privacy research at Facebook. So how one gets that job, I'm sure Liz would love to tell the story with folks, but she has her PhD in psychology, but studied at CSU, and her team studies foundational privacy topics at Facebook. And so she's really involved in social science research and is passionate about diversity and inclusion and contributes to numerous initiatives in this space. So thanks and welcome from Austin, Liz Koneski. Morris Price is also no stranger to many of you. Morris serves as the executive director of City Year Denver, but he was just reminding us of a float that he was on as a homecoming king. So you might recognize him from that era, or from more recently, last year at homecoming and being part of that. So Morris is really involved in the Denver community in the education sector, K-12, has been really in the higher ed administration in the not-for-profit, helping also advocate for LGBTQ civil rights. So Morris is also really decorated with lots of different awards and is a proud CSU Foundation board member as of this past year as well. So welcome, Morris. And Barb Winter, also another person that many of you might know. She has done many things. She's recently retired, but served as Executive VP and Chief Community Officer with NCredit, and has been really involved in community liaison in her roles in the energy industry as well. She also served on our Alumni Association and has always stayed in touch and is a proud alum for living in Manitou Springs, and has received also many awards. So thanks to our panelists for being here. We also have a student, Mary, just joined us. She dashed virtually across campus and joined us. So Mary Geberstatic is also a student, a presidential ambassador for us. And so she's going to share some insight as we have a conversation about what it's like to be a student today. So, but let's kick things off with a poll. And this is the part where we want some audience participation. So we're talking about philanthropy tonight. You might notice our backgrounds of the panelists. Let's see if anybody knows what is the common factor amongst our backgrounds. So you've got 3 choices there, all built, renovated since 2012. They were all on the main campus of CSU Fort Collins, and they were all named through donations. Can others see the background? There we go. Donations. Good. We have a great, well-informed group. So we have, our campus has transformed in the last decade especially, and that's much of that is through the generosity of donors. So we thought it'd be fun to put our backgrounds up of many, and we have many more facilities that have been generously renovated or created through the donations of donors. And so thank you for the people who are on the call who've had something to do with those, and just wanted to highlight that before we turn it over to Joyce. It's been a year of dramatic change, and higher ed, there's been obviously a lot happening on our campus and virtually, and so we thought it would be great to hear from our president about what this year of change has been for CSU and higher education in general. So Joyce, take it away.
I just want to thank you all so much for being here this evening. Even though we can't all be together on the Oval building a snowman, we can be together virtually and really share and reflect on what the last year has been. This year has brought so many changes, but I'm immensely proud of the strength and resilience of our campus community. The resilience that the community has shown gives me immense hope for the future. We successfully responded to the challenges of this pandemic. And I want to share with you that I was on the phone yesterday and today with people who live very far from Colorado, one in Florida and one in New York. And they said that they both knew that CSU had had an incredibly successful response because they had actually read about us in Florida and New York. And that is a real testament to the incredible commitment of our students, staff, and faculty. You may remember we're up on the 1-year anniversary of when we decided that we had to go remote, and it will always be in my mind. It was March 7th. We were hearing from a lot of epidemiologists that we really needed to go remote. And I made the decision on March 7th because our students were going away for spring break March 13th. And I knew, having talked to the epidemiologists, that it was too dangerous to bring them back. So it was a really difficult decision, but I have to say that once I announced it, everyone just pulled together and made a decision that we were going to be 100% in, that we were going to continue everything we had to do to help our students learn. We were going to continue our research. We were going to continue our engagement throughout Colorado and beyond. And we knew that we also had to continue to serve our students, our community, our staff, and our faculty. So all thanks to the combination of good planning and timely innovations from focused, purpose-driven research and support from the Board of Governors and the state, we were able to pull it all together and make things happen very quickly. Our entire faculty moved from on-campus teaching to remote teaching in 10 days. It was just extraordinary. And there were so many people behind the scenes who made that possible. What I think is the most important thing is that that transition and our ability to carry it out really is because our mission hasn't changed. We're still working on providing quality education. We're focused on access to that education. We're focused on excellence and how we deliver excellence in learning, in teaching, in research, and in outreach. And we also then had to add on top of that the concern about keeping everyone healthy. And even though our students left campus, we still had our essential workers on campus. And that was during a time, if you remember back to March, there were significant supply chain issues. We couldn't get masks, we couldn't get sanitizer. But we put teams of people together to try to figure all of this out, and people stepped forward. So I always say this is part of the land grant mission, is we just roll up our sleeves and get things done. And that didn't change. Within the first month, I would say, of the pandemic with our essential workers, because of the supply chain issues, we weren't able to get masks. So our costume department, our 4-H students, and other people got together and made masks for our essential workers. We had a researcher who said, look, I know how to make sanitizer. And she went into the lab and cranked out bottles of sanitizer and distributed them all over campus. It was truly extraordinary what we were able to do because we're so resourceful. Financial implications in many ways were out of our control. It cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to keep campus going, to keep everyone employed, and to keep everyone safe. And so our top priorities, and the Board of Governors was right there with us, was to keep staff on payroll and avoid pay cuts. And that was in part because of us, because of our community and how much we care about our people, but it was also because we're the largest employer in Fort Collins. And if we had had to start to lay people off during that period, we would have had a dramatic effect on the economy of Fort Collins. So working with the city, with Chamber of Commerce, we were able to avoid that. We had the support of City Council, the mayor, our county commissioners, and we worked very hard together. It was really a wonderful time to collaborate and figure out how we were going to do what we needed to do. Fortunately, with the CARES Act funding from the federal government, we were able to provide financial support for our students. And this was really important. And I have to mention that because of philanthropy, we were actually able to distribute funds to more students than the government had allocated funds for. So the philanthropy in that moment, in March, April, May, when everyone was struggling so much, philanthropy made a critical difference. Our faculty, staff, and administrators have worked tirelessly to keep campus open. And with close coordination with our teaching continuity and recovering team, we've been able to do that. When we returned in the fall, it was really pretty extraordinary. Everyone was, are you sure you can bring students back to the residence halls? And we brought back 4,500 students to the residence halls, and we kept them healthy. We kept the transmission rate down. We tested everyone on a regular basis. And it was truly extraordinary. Nearly 87% of our undergraduates had a class in person in the fall, whether it was in a classroom or a laboratory or some other experiential education. We maintained on-campus operations for the entire intended 13 weeks. We arranged the schedule so that students would not return to campus after Thanksgiving or after fall break. And that meant that we had a 13-week window to test, to keep everyone safe. And it was amazing what we were able to accomplish. We know that education looks different after the pandemic. We also know to a great extent it will remain the same. And one of the things we've learned is that everyone loves the flexibility of that technology gives us and allows us to adapt for our students, for our faculty, and for our staff. But we also know that there are a lot of students who still really want the social interaction that being on campus brings. And so while the technology gives us a lot more flexibility in how our students learn, it's also very true that students yearn for the opportunity to be on campus, and we want to continue to make that possible. Supporting our students is one of our most important goals. But we also know that to keep our students learning and learning in an excellent way, we have to support our faculty. And so we offered additional professional development for our faculty who logged over 14,000 hours in courses dedicated to improving teaching and delivering content online and virtually. And that was really extraordinary. Our Institute for Teaching and Learning really just did an amazing job in delivering that content. We upgraded remote classroom technologies and lecture capture abilities. We went through campus, combed campus, and upgraded everything we possibly could, made a huge difference. And then we offered resources for temporary work assignments to provide flexibility during a difficult time. And that was something that was very important to us to do, but it was also very important to our entire community for us to be able to communicate to them that we were going to be flexible and we were going to take their health seriously and we were going to do everything we could to protect. Additionally, in order to support our staff, we introduced new policies for sick leave, for child care, for elder care, for individuals who cared for others who might be sick or disabled in some way. We shared employee assistance and care programs widely. We met with organizational leaders to expedite feedback, had very regular meetings with our classified staff council, our administrative staff council, and faculty council. So we were able to help our people stay at home, stay safe, and our facilities team just went to work across campus to improve air quality handling, to help limit transmission. Our central receiving team acquired and distributed PPE once the supply chain issues were resolved, and we were able to then move forward and get the supplies that we needed for our essential workers. In the meantime, we kept up internationally ranked research, particularly in COVID-19 and other diseases that can leap from animals to humans. We were listed among the top 5 best universities solving the coronavirus pandemic. And I want to give you a sense of our pride in this because we were ranked number 5 along with places like MIT, Johns Hopkins, Oxford. And being a public land grant university, they have more resources than we do. But we were number 5. We were right in there in world ranked universities for our research. So we're very, very proud about that. We also ranked number 25 in public health universities in the nation by US News and World Report. And that's really meaningful for us because we have focused so much on animal and human health. We also have spent a lot of time this year focusing, and our researchers focused on diversity, equity, and equality issues, particularly in terms of mortality rates in disadvantaged communities among African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which bore the brunt of death from COVID-19. All of that was taken into consideration and really affected what we did in terms of our research, but also in terms of our education and in terms of our outreach. We created more than 25 interdisciplinary teams to investigate a range of issues created by the pandemic. We were named the primary testing site for personal protective equipment in Colorado, and we engaged in very high level, early on, wastewater testing, saliva screening, and nasal swab testing. Our Office of Engagement and Extension adjusted rapidly to meet changing community needs all over Colorado. CSU Online leveraged its expertise to do a quick pivot for operations to support campus needs, but also the needs of counties, all 64 in Colorado. Extension programs began to use, 4-H programs began to use technology much more. We were able to move to virtual clubs and service projects to keep our youth engaged around the state. And CSU Extension used the idea of victory gardens and introduced Grow and Give, which was a modern victory garden project. People all over the state raised fruits and vegetables and donated them to local food banks and to their neighbors. There were tens of thousands of pounds of fresh food donated when so many people became unemployed and had significant food insecurity. One of the questions that everyone asks me now that we're through this year is we've been through a lot of disruption and some changes are here to stay. I think some of the most important changes are those that see this crisis that we've had as one of a time of renewed sense of creativity, innovation, the can-do spirit. Our community has pulled together. It feels a little bit like if we could do this, we can do anything. If this is the kind of change we're going to be confronting, we're going to see it as opportunity, and we're going to mobilize, and we're going to do what we need to take advantage of those opportunities. I think that the other thing that we've learned throughout this year is that viewing everything through a justice, equity, and equality lens is absolutely essential. And not that we hadn't been doing that, but this is a deepened, renewed commitment. And we've learned the importance of that through this year. So I'm so proud of what we've accomplished. But the reason that CSU is performing better than our peers at other institutions is because of the amazing people we have working on campus, our amazing working groups and teams of experts, our incredible students, and all of our supporters like you. We couldn't have done this without you. The kind of support that we received from our alums and through philanthropy was amazing, but it's not always about philanthropy in terms of dollars. It's about knowing that you're there, you have our back, you support us, and we felt incredibly supported by you. So thank you for that. Thank you for your dedication.
Thanks, Joyce. That's a great overview. And we have Mary with us. I thought it'd be interesting to hear from her how her year has gone and what changes she's encountered and the positives and struggles. Maybe if you could shed some light for our donors and alums. What's it like to be a student today and in this past year, Mary?
Yeah, of course. And I guess I'll just start out with the first part of that question. Obviously, we've had a mix of virtual and in-person courses, but to touch on the positives, I feel like we've had a lot of creative innovation on campus. For example, I'm one of the ambassadors for my college, for the College of Liberal Arts. And although it was not our idea, we pivoted off of the idea from admissions to start doing virtual tours. And it's something that we just came up with in the midst of this pandemic, and realizing that we can still utilize this strategy post-pandemic as well, in helping students who previously have not been able to come to campus for tours and visits due to, let's say, not being able to come to campus, living in a different state. And so I feel like we've had a lot of room to grow in terms of creative innovation. And going off of that, I think some of the negatives that we've had is I'm a first generation student myself, and statistically, we've had a lot of students who are first gen that have fallen through the cracks, and there have been a lot of students who have taken a semester off, taking less courses this semester, just due to the online virtual format and resources not being at the center for first gen students especially. But I think it has also allowed us to create new initiatives, such as the First Gen Initiative Steering Committee that has just begun in combating this issue. So I think it's given us a lot of room to grow. And I think we've also still had a lot of community building on campus with students who still want to be involved and having that virtual platform, especially for students who were previously not able to come to campus. So those are just some of the things that I've noticed as a student.
Thank you for that. That's a good insight. My son, who's a freshman, he's had, today is his 14th COVID test. So that's a regular part of activity here on campus.
Yes.
So. Well, it's great to have you with us, and what an awesome program, the Presidential Ambassadors Program. Many of you visit with our PAs at events previously, and so we're keeping the program going. Somebody had asked a question, I think Susan asked about philanthropy, and clearly we saw changes as well. The core way we do business and engage with folks, from events to face-to-face interactions, just all went out the window. But I'm really proud to say in calendar year 2019 and to 2020, we saw a difference in philanthropic dollars by only $228,000. So a difference on $159 million in those 2 calendar years, only a difference of $228,000. So that's really remarkable, and it's because of all of you. I think what it says to me is the definition of philanthropy is love of humankind, and what more compelling time than in a crisis that people banded together and did things and supported things like our RAM Aid Fund, infectious disease research, and the many, many other things that are still needed, scholarships and other support areas for our students and our faculty and our staff. So philanthropy is alive and well. We had to relearn everything we thought was the core way we did business, but you all have shown up. I saw somebody from Bangkok tonight on here, and I think he came to our alumni event right before all of this happened, and we've engaged with people virtually in new ways that we didn't do before, and so we've got some really great lessons going into years ahead. So we're really optimistic about our ability to continue to raise much needed funds for the university and engage our alumni and donor community. So with that, I am going to shift to some questions. I'll start with Liz and Barb. Barb, you've stayed engaged with CSU since you graduated, and Liz, you graduated more recently. Tell us about that journey and how each of you became a donor to CSU and why.
I graduated in 2009, and I was reflecting with Kim earlier about my most wonderful memories at CSU, the things that I cherished, and one was I really found the career that I wanted to go into. So I was a psychology major at CSU, and I think I entered school thinking I wanted to do counseling or something like that, and I found through the great professors that we had at CSU, I found this professor who really took me under her wing and mentored me, and she was a social psychology researcher. And I really found like, oh my gosh, I can do science, which I loved. I loved the sciences, but I get to do research and study people and how we interact socially, which of course during this time I think is very prominent on all of our minds. And so I went on to graduate school at the University of Texas at Austin. So I lovingly call myself a ram horn, as in a ram and a longhorn from my 2 educational experiences. And I got my PhD in social psychology, and that is the field that I entered in the private sector. So I started research at Facebook, and now I'm lucky enough to lead the privacy research team. So that's a little bit about my journey since CSU. And I would say the way I got involved in philanthropy is twofold. One, it was my time at CSU that, really inspired me to know the type of community member I wanted to be. So, I was very involved with clubs and volunteer opportunities. And I mean, I remember vividly things like volunteering for the Special Olympics with one of the clubs that I was involved with extracurricularly. And just, the feelings of giving back and spending my time and energy. The athletes were so inspiring, and they and the organizers were so grateful for us, helping to facilitate that event. And so there was lots of moments like that that really encouraged me in my life about how I wanted to show up. And so, I've been lucky enough to experience a lot of things, including the opportunities I've had at Facebook. And I think that sometimes there are those positive moments like I had at CSU, and then there are also tough life moments. I think we've gone through many of those as Joyce was just telling us about this year. And for me, I lost a really close friend of mine who I was very close with in graduate school to breast cancer at a very young age. She had a rare form of breast cancer that unfortunately she lost the battle with very, very quickly. And so, that was one of the things that inspired me to really, I think, uptick my involvement in philanthropy in two forms. She was a professor. She deeply cared about education, and her students adored her. And so I really wanted to give back to education and to create scholarships at CSU, at her university where she was a professor. So that was really important to me to honor her legacy. And then two was to invest in that in breast cancer research. So in triple negative breast cancer research, to make sure that I was funding the science and support for breast cancer survivors. So I think it's sometimes those moments that are tough that can inspire philanthropy. And then my philosophy has really just become since then, how do we keep that going and how do we make that enduring? So that's a little bit about my journey.
Thanks, Liz. Barb?
That was great, Liz. I loved hearing your message. I'm kind of an elder stateswoman tonight, I think, going back to a class of 72, but I want to say that I highly valued my opportunity for a college education. I was raised in a single parent household. My father had died in the military, and I was able to achieve being a first generation college graduate. I especially appreciated all the help that I received from high school teachers who took an interest in me, and as well as support from faculty, advisors, and other significant adults in my journey. One of my great remembrances is one of my CSU business professors encouraging me to practice interviewing by going to the Career Center and interviewing for summer jobs with employers that were on campus. And the result of that, and this was kind of in a downturn of college recruitment at my time, this actually led to my first job that summer with an energy company. And subsequently, when I graduated after my senior year, I was hired by that company. So I was very fortunate, and I still am a very strong advocate of college internships with employers. What was even more remarkable about my relationship with this professor, he would actually come after I was employed. He would stop by in Colorado Springs on some of his journeys and just check in with me and see how it was going. So, I mean, that was a pretty remarkable relationship that we had. In my work career, and I did retire in 2019, I have been very fortunate. I only worked for two major organizations in my whole work life, and one being in energy and the other in finance. Both of these companies were very community-minded and financially supportive. And that led to my interests in community affairs, and that subsequently became a part of my job responsibilities over time. I actually was recruited by the Alumni Association to represent my region in Southern Colorado, and that gave me further access to working with others in the university environment. I continue to have a strong desire to mentor students, and actually, in terms of my life journey, actually pay it forward to assist other students as I was supported.
Thanks, Barb. On the other side of things, Joe, you are an adopted Ram. You've graduated, have a couple of degrees from a few other places that are kind of prestigious and were great fundraising success. But why did you choose to give back to CSU and leave a legacy here?
Well, it was really pretty easy when you think about it. CSU has so many remarkable assets, particularly in its faculty, particularly in the way in which it's led. I want to pause here and say in this session what I have said in so many other sessions, and that is to praise President McConnell for her leadership over the last year. It's just been remarkable. I can remember almost exactly a year ago, you and I and you, Kim, were at the luncheon for the Daniels Scholars. And it was after that luncheon a year ago that you decided, President McConnell, that you had to make that correct decision. And I want to call out your leadership as I call out the leadership of the faculty. CSU is able to attract so much wonderful support from the philanthropic community through its efforts in engineering, whether it's in the veterinary school, as you talked about with regard to human animal infectious diseases. I'm a product of the liberal arts, and the liberal arts really made a change in my life. And when I decided to highlight what was going on at CSU, it was really simple because we have such an outstanding faculty in the College of Liberal Arts. And I wanted to find a way to attract the best minds we could from the students, not just in Colorado, but elsewhere, to come to CSU because of the faculty and to be able to experience their remarkable gifts. So the gift is really the gift giving back to the faculty at the College of Liberal Arts. One more, we talk about philanthropy and it kind of rolls off, but we need to go back and examine it. It is a very deliberate process. Philanthropy is damn hard work. You know that, Kim. The reason we didn't drop off in our contributions was because those who support this institution have a long range understanding of what it takes. They expect accountability. This is not charity. This is not a one-time thing. This is a very deliberate, focused vision that people are trying to come. In the audience out there watching this, you've got Dave Edwards and Paula who know what philanthropy is about because they have been focused on the long term. You've got Mike Rosser, who has done so much for this university. It's just unbelievable. So the question is, how can you have that vision and play it out over the long term? And that's what CSU is doing.
Great, thanks, Joe. I think the building in question in the chat is the one behind Joe. That's where the spa, the purple spa was. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read chat. Behind me, you're correct, Mike, that it is the Michael Smith Natural Resource Building that you can see behind me. So Morris, there are many inequities. You work in education and K-12 especially, and so you're very familiar with the inequities and long-term learning disparities that affect minoritized populations. What do you think CSU can do to help overcome these challenges? And how do we engage alumni that might not have had the most positive experience while at CSU?
Oh, thank you. And first of all, I also want to join Joe in thanking Kim for this opportunity and President McConnell for her leadership. And I don't say that casually because I've worked for 4 universities, and you know good leadership when you see it, and it's more during difficult times. Kim, I think your question goes to both ends of the spectrum, going into this process and then on the other side of it when you've graduated. I think we often forget that majority of folks in this country don't have a college degree. Majority of our friends are first generation college students, but we often lose that when we talk about the process. And I think sometimes in doing so, while not trying to focus on it, we give an impression that those first generation students are rare, and they're not. most of the students on your floor are going through this process and learning the process of being independent and learning that about academic choices and building relationships. So I think we need to continue to remind them that you're not alone, and this is not, you're not the first one to go through it. And our job is particularly, and I praise this with Dr. McConnell all the time, as a land-grant university, you are here, we are built for it. It's not the other way around. We're not built for folks who come with multiple degrees and multiple generations from Ivy League schools. This university was started with the intention of welcoming you as a first generation student on the campus. And therefore, this is your campus. I often told folks when I worked at universities, you're not a guest on someone else's campus. Take advantage of every single opportunity. It was designed for you, the first generation student, when we think only 37% of the country has a college degree. You're in the majority on that campus, but most folks don't have a college degree. To Joe's point, I think on the other side of this is where you really talk about the value of, I call the 4 T's of philanthropy. It's not just time, talent, and treasure, it's testimony. And when I learned that my testimony, that how I talked about CSU was as valuable, and my time was as valuable, and my talent was as valuable to the institution, then my treasure followed. When Blanche Hughes, who I will continue to sing the praise every single day, reached out to me and said, would you come back and just talk about what happens with GLBT students? Everyone's had some bad experience, either a person of color, LGBT, if you're first generation, if you were just missing your family because you're from across the country, everyone had a bad experience. Is how did the university address that even during or after? Do you recognize it? First of all, Blanche acknowledged it and others recognized it and said, we know this is difficult, but you can do more good by coming back now than living with that particular bad feeling. 20 years later, you remember the good more than the bad. And so they invite you back to talk about, tell your story. And when you realize that's valuable, offer an experience or an internship, as I think Barb mentioned, that's something that says your talent is as valuable as your treasure. It's much easier after that to write the check, because then you see this is where it's following. The university values everything. In my fundraising work, a $10 check gets the same thank you letter as a $100,000 check. Because we know what that means to someone who took time to write that check to you. And I think when I get a thank you note or a postcard or a phone call from a CSU student, I don't think it's about based on how much I give, because I know people give a lot more, but they're recognizing the full breadth of my philanthropy, and that's what I appreciate. It's a statistical fact from my master's in nonprofit. If you're an African-American male who makes more than $70,000 a year, you're solicited 6 times more than your white counterpart. Between your community, your public interest, your general interest, you're going to get selected, you're going to get solicited more. So I will pick and choose where my dollars go based on, did they appreciate all my aspects of philanthropy, not just where my treasure goes.
Thanks, Morris. Joyce, can you tell us how you've seen philanthropy change our campus since you've been president, or when you came in as a new president? Where did you see the fingerprints of philanthropy on our campus that made us unique and special?
Well, first of all, there's just the legacy of so many students that I've talked to and alumni that I've talked to who've told me that without the philanthropy from our friends and supporters, they wouldn't have been able to go to the university. So that's the first thing. It's the stories that people tell about what it meant, particularly if they were first gen, to come to this university and have the support that they needed to be successful. That it has really moved me. But in addition, just look at all of those buildings behind our panelists. We've been able to build some state-of-the-art facilities. And I always want to point out that our facilities are not to be just bright, shiny objects on a campus. Our facilities are really essential to our student learning. And so to come to a campus where philanthropists really understand that how important new technology, new buildings, new space is to keep a campus thriving and up to date is just huge. And I want to say also that philanthropy buoys an entire university, and because it signals the confidence that our community has in the campus and in its leadership. And I just think, given our 150 years of success, that success in great part is attributed to people who cared deeply about CSU once they received their diploma and were able to move on, or like Joe, who from the outside could see that CSU was different and served a really important role in Colorado and beyond.
Thanks, Joyce. Thinking about some of the things you just said, and Morris, your number of how many times African-American man is solicited for gifts. I'm curious from the audience, have your philanthropic priorities changed over the last year? Let's see if we can do a poll here, and let's see if we, now, of course, we're going to want to dig in on that. So we'll have to follow up with all of you that are on here. I keep seeing new names, Bob Eisenman, great to see you, and Leslie Walker, and just so many fun names, and walk down memory lane as I see you pouring in. So let's see if people have changed their philanthropic priorities over the last year, or if they've remained the same. Just curious, we thought we'd take this opportunity to do a little research for our operation. So do we have an answer here? Can we see the answers so far? Yep. So pretty well, exactly evenly split between yes and no, and somewhat so interesting that way. Well, Joyce, we have a question for you that somebody in the audience sent in prior to the panel, and I thought this was a good one. So speaking of philanthropic priorities, if one of your fine donors just happened to come into, $10 million tomorrow that they needed, to do away with, and CSU was the place they wanted to give it to, the only stipulation being that you need to use this money to fund a new initiative, how would you deploy these dollars?
Oh, it's such a great question. I love that question. I've been thinking about it, really thinking about it. What is it that, and it really makes you identify priorities. But I think the first thing I would say is being true to the access mission to the university. And because we can never keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And with the statistic that Morris has given us about first-gen students and students who we would want to have on our campus, I think that we would use that money first to find new ways to engage students, both in Colorado and out of Colorado, to be able to get them on campus. And one of the things that is going on in higher education right now is a lot of conversation about how much learning did students lose during the pandemic, and how does that impact their preparedness, which could further exacerbate access. And so I think a part of the new use of that funding would be to mobilize our campus to address those needs, so we know that we're empowering those students to be more successful.
Thanks, Joyce. So Joe and Liz, what role does philanthropy play in a more educated society from your perspective? Joe, do you want to take this first stab at that?
I'll take a stab. I want to turn that just around a little bit, because I mentioned earlier how philanthropy in many respects differs from the spontaneity of charity. And in terms of it being very hard work to do. And what society or it needs to do is become better educated on the difficulties, on the deliberations that go into the philanthropic enterprise impulse. So often we get tied, all caught up in the number. Boy, they gave 5 million, they gave 10 million, they gave a number. And we don't look behind. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Because what was the purpose? What's the accountability? What's the outcome? What's the duration? What's the change that's going to come about? And so the education, really, society needs a better understanding of the philanthropic impulse. And part of that needs also, one last, in terms of funding public education, public higher education, you know, its value is not a self-evident truth. You have to keep talking about it. But most people go through the experience of public higher education with no understanding of where the money came from to educate, to provide their education, the public funds. And as those diminish, we've got to begin building a better sense of responsibility of graduates or anyone who attended a public higher education institution for its continuity through philanthropic giving. That's the great universe ahead of us.
Yeah, I really love and appreciate Joe's remarks here, and I think about it in a similar way. So I think of education and enduring philanthropy. So to Joe's point, that ongoing hard work as an interconnected circle in several ways. So one, I already mentioned before, you know, it was in my formative years at CSU that I learned, not just in the traditional sense of getting my degree, but I learned how to give back and how I wanted to show up as a community member. And so I think that, you know, philanthropy that supports education and is intertwined doesn't just support that next generation of scholars and professionals, but should support the next generation of philanthropists. It should be a circle. And then the second way I think about that cycle is that education fuels so many social goods for us, right? So we are not going to improve cancer treatments without ensuring the top minds from diverse backgrounds, bringing diverse perspectives, are working on important issues like that. And that, of course, all starts with education. So I think one really needs to fuel the other.
So much of what we're talking about connects back to our land grant mission, I think. And Barb and, well, all of you and many of you out there in the audience as well are tremendous volunteers and give back and serve, and community service is very important. Barb and Morris, could you share some thoughts about, you talked about testimony, Morris, but how does volunteerism lead to connect to philanthropy, and what can we do more of to foster that in future generations?
I think where CSU and as a land grant institution has so many opportunities is because of there's so many opportunities to get involved. I was surprised when I learned about Ram for Hunger, where it shocked me that we have students who are on college campus. You think once they're there, they're gonna have a tough couple of years, but they'll be on the other side of success to find out they're struggling with food scarcity as a student. There's room to get involved. When you learn that first generation students sometimes are, through whatever circumstance, their family's not able to support them, or they get disowned because they're GLBT issues, or they become independent and thought of that go against their family issues. There's a chance for you to support someone. I've learned more ways to get involved than I ever thought possible, because I think, to Joe's credit, you only hear about the large gifts around buildings and capital projects, and not about that scholarship for that really unique student. I had a young man come to me and said, he was he and hawing trying to figure out, and I said, spit it out, young man. He said, I need money to get to a leadership program, and I've saved $400 and I just need $500. To have someone go through that struggle to ask for $100, when we will spend that on a meal, and knowing what that $100 would do for his advancement, his career, just finding opportunities. And I found on the CSU Foundation board, there's so many unique ways that people can give, again, to their time and their talent and their treasure and their testimony of telling 3 friends who are like, well, CSU doesn't need me because I don't make a lot of money, but you're sitting in a school as a teacher. And what a powerful thing you can do to remind students about a summer program that we might have. So I think, again, it's showing all the different opportunities and just finding that one constant connection and that one touch.
Thank you. Barb?
I think what I was going to comment on specifically was how volunteerism leads to philanthropy. And I think that comes for many of us in terms of how we volunteered, as Morris has indicated, in our various communities and circles to support goodness and welfare in our areas of influence. I've worked on a number of boards and committees and commissions in my work life, and I have my employers to thank for that, to granting me and being gracious about allowing that time to balance my work responsibilities. I especially like Morris's comment about testimony, and I think that's especially strong. We all speak of time, talent, and treasure, but the aspect of telling others. My role in at my last employer, I actually was in the driver's seat to make awards to community organizations and entities. And so you get to see the flavor of, on the side that you've worked on boards and committees, you see what goes on that side of the equation. And then when you're on the side of making choices to make grants and awards, it makes a difference to understand that dynamic. And I think the other thing that needs to be worked on very strongly, and I think even on the campus, is we actually started a young professionals group in our company and tried to help educate them as well from the standpoint of service and philanthropy. And I think it's very important that as we do that with our own children, with people that we perhaps embrace and help support their endeavors, there really should be a sense of incorporating that and learning to pay that forward. I think about, when someone approached me for what I considered my first very large gift that I had to give a lot of thought to in my middle years. And you just have to reflect on the importance of that gift and its outcome. And many times that's a pain point to make that first large gift, but it's interesting to find that after you make that step, all the others after that really come much easier. And I think you actually learn and incorporate philanthropy and the goodness that it brings to the world and to yourself.
Thank you. I think I'm struck, we're almost out of time, but what an uplifting and heartwarming conversation. I heard so much about community and paying it forward and green and gold pride. And we're just so proud to have all of you as alums and supporters of CSU. We want you can see your university is in great hands with President McConnell. She's one of us. She cares deeply about our land grant mission and our people. And we just can't wait to get everybody back so we can see people on campus again. But we wouldn't be who we are without all of you, or what we are and what we can do. So thank you for your support. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. Looking forward to answering questions we didn't get to. We will send emails to you attempting to answer your questions. And we'll also have a recording of this available next week for you. So I know there were several questions that came in via email as well, and we will make sure we send you email responses back. So we could just go a long time, but I know everybody is probably zoomed out from a long day, and just appreciate that. And we'll also share our infographic that was designed for tonight. So thanks for all your support, and go Rams.